So the propaganda is, hey, our guy. This is a good question to ask Rick. We have propaganda today. Humans are pretty much operating the same way that we did 2,000 years ago. I imagine the common folk, you want the general populace to think this guy really was, this. The people who are probably in the know, the Senate, the educated, the philosophers are probably going, yeah. It's legend, it's mythic or whatever. Do you think that the general populace would have believed that the Caesar actually did ascend, that this is the propaganda they want the known world to kind of be under the stupidity of, hey, we know what this is. Let them just think this is literally true. We know what this means in our category, in our higher echelon of society.
Yeah, it becomes difficult. I mean, there is a cult. There's obviously a ruler cult that's definitely in place, and there's sincerity there. That's not a joke. It's also, I think, political propaganda. Livia, the wife of Augustus, was in large measure even responsible for the institution of that cult throughout the major cities in the Greek East. And so they were building these temples left and right, trying to get that stuff going as the early empire was taking off there, to really exalt, because they hadn't had rulers like this before that had so much power vested in them. After Julius Caesar, then every basic ruler there had unprecedented level of power. And so this was a way to elevate them. In the Greek East, you had to be divine to rule. That was kind of the requirement for the job. And so,
this is a very important point. And then I want to have Derek Bennett jump in here. We're all well aware that Jesus never spoke of a kingdom. He never said like the kingdom of God is coming. In fact, he was never even supposedly known in post-mortem situation to have been seated at the right hand of God, ruling on high, right? Like, so you keep talking about these rulers and like these people who would be over kingdoms, but Jesus never talked about kingdoms, right? I'm being sarcastic.
I think we have to see the King of Kings. How can he be dressed up in any less magnificence than the Caesars? And
let me throw something out there, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Dr. Miller. Would it be fair to say Christianity, sort of drawing from the same cultural milieu as the Caesar cult would be, but almost in a polemic, where they flip it on its head? Instead of having this rich kingdom and having all the power in the world, you're having this like humble Jewish prophet who is going to, instead of, like it says in the text, instead of laying up riches in earth, lay up riches in heaven. So it's sort of like a polemic of what the cult, what the imperial cult is doing, sort of flipping it basically. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yes, it's subversive, and that's why these guys are getting killed. It's offensive. They got this backwater, almost like an indigent, a vagrant almost, walking around without a house or anything. And, they're saying, oh, and by the way, this guy gets exalted just as high as your highest guy.
Right.
And that's patently offensive. And so that's really where the rub is here. And that's why people are getting killed. And what's pissing off the Roman government is they're taking this character that's clearly marginal, clearly not significant in the big theater and the grand theater of classical antiquity, and exalting him with the same kind of honors that would go to their highest political figures, and even more so. And so, but I would broaden it. It's not just political. You've got philosophers also having translations. You've got generals. You've got athletes even. And so this is the way that you would install someone in the classical antiquities Hall of Fame, so to speak. These are the protocols: is to dress them up with divine birth. One parent is a divine parent, the other is human. And then the other one would be to have a stylized ending where they vanish or are translated or ascend. They're basically given, they're not going to go to Hades, basically. They're not going down with everyone else. They're getting installed in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so to speak. And so,
We have a hero watching us right now. Dennis McDonald just texted me and he says, "Hey, Jesus almost certainly spoke of the kingdom of God. Why do you think otherwise?" And it's like, no, I was being sarcastic. I think he didn't hear me.
You almost sounded serious for a second.
Yeah, I did that on purpose because I wanted to kind of point out, like, you guys keep talking about kingdoms and rulers and like and powers and principalities and stuff. I'm joking, and I'm like, oh, but Jesus never did that. The point I'm trying to say is, here's another one. Okay, here's another guy who's claiming to get a kingdom that's going to be ruler, and it would be absurd, right, Dr. Miller, to not think they wouldn't model it or imitate or even react in some way to the well-known what is established here that's over the Jewish people, or however you want to paint it. Anyway, I've been hogging it, Derek. You got to like interrupt me, man.
Well, I'll jump in here just to say that in order to be fair to some of what Jones and Nathan Nadeau were getting at, partly this is a rebuke against the old Fraserian model of the dying and rising God. So what the figures made popular by James Fraser in The Golden Bough, the sort of dying and rising crop deities. Most scholars today, and certainly not Richard Miller here, would say, most scholars would not say that Jesus was just another dying and rising crop deity like Adonis or Tammuz.
Mm-hmm.
So they're right about that. But what we're talking about is something a little bit different, if not loosely related, but a little different. And I think Dr. Miller would agree with this, is more of the apotheosis and translation and Greek resurrection beliefs that were popular during the time that Christianity emerged. Dr. Miller was in fact the one who helped me to kind of parse those two. So that's why after I wrote my chapter on dying and rising gods in John Loftus's anthology, when I went and I did my presentation for the Global Center for Religious Research on resurrection and apotheosis, I've done that for your channel, Derek, I was sure to separate those two categories. And so it's more the apotheosis and translation type of mythos that we're really getting at here. The problem, as I see it, is that sometimes the lines between those two categories can get a little bit blurred because there was so much cross-pollination and syncretism in the ancient Mediterranean world. So, for instance, Osiris, I bring that one up all the time. He falls into that sort of that Fraserian category of the dying rising god, but that is equally an apotheosis myth. For Osiris and for ancient Egyptians, what happened to them? They became immortal and everlasting gods. There are even depictions of the pharaoh ascending into heaven as Osiris had done. And great work by Eliezer Gonzalez. He traces even some of these Greco-Roman asset motifs to ancient Egyptian thought. Not to say that it came exclusively from that, but that there is something of a link there. So I bring up in my video with the response that I did to Jones and Nadeau. I bring up the example of Antinous, the lover of Hadrian. And so this is a figure from the Greco-Roman world, 2nd century, I believe, and he is clothed like Osiris. It is said that he becomes known as Osirantinus, the reborn and everlasting. On the obelisk, it says that he was raised again to new life. He becomes an immortal god, and others can be initiated into the cult of Antinous so that they can become immortalized figures like him. So this kind of phenomenon, this deification, can happen to actual historical figures, and that's kind of the salient point here. And that's what we're saying. It looks like that's what happened with Jesus. So it doesn't matter that he was probably an actual historical figure, but he became deified according to common cultural conceptions and mythic motifs of the time.